Did you ever think about reaching out to an organization, a third party outside of your organization that could guide you
Right.
on this to avoid all of that? People have to recognize what they don't know and not be afraid to raise their hand internally and say, listen, I'm IT, I can't represent what ops needs here. And even I'm ops, and I don't even really know for sure how to leverage this new technology the right way.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Nick Mulholland, your host of Get in the Hole with Tech-Gofer, alcohol discussions, candid tech conversations, and probably a little something about golf as we normally do. Excited today to have Christa Heibel from CH Consulting Group on today. How are you?
I'm well. Good to see you, Nick.
Yeah, you too. So I guess we'll start off as we normally do. What are you drinking?
I'm glad you asked. I'm drinking now. This is a selfish plug for a local distillery. It's called Cantilever Bourbon Whiskey. Cantilever, little like niche distillery in northern Minnesota. I don't even drink bourbon. Fantastic.
Is that by where you live? Is that
Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes. So good
okay.
Minnesota water as the basis. No, I'm just kidding.
A lot of lakes out there.
True story.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
I decided to go with a beer today, just the Two-Hearted IPA from Bell's. It's one of the highest ranked beers in Total Wine, and it's pretty tasty IPA when I'm feeling it. So
Good to know. Good to know. Valuable data already.
So let's jump into it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, a little bit about CH Consulting Group, why you started the company, and we'll go from there.
I like to call myself a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I just am fascinated by business. So I started my career while still in college, working in a contact center operation. And since then, I've been in and out of sales, service, support, whether that's look like a traditional call center, contact center or not. Those functions, marketing and other operational leadership is kind of my past. CH Consulting Group, I started 13 years ago, actually this month. It's our birthday this month. We are a team of about 25 IT and operational senior and executive level CX, contact center, IT ops leaders that work with organizations around all of those pieces of the business, strategy, implementation, organizational reorging, and transformational projects. So
I appreciate our new partnership, especially because as we typically get brought in to help companies find the technology, a lot of times, as we've talked about, there's a disconnect a lot of times between what IT is doing, what operations wants, what sales wants. You want to talk a little bit about what you guys do, those type of projects, and how you're kind of bridging some of the communication gaps?
Yeah, I think, I've been around long enough that we were manually dialing, Nick, when I started on the phones. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been doing this. So it long gone are the days of a simple on-prem, ACD call management selection technology decision. Now we are in a much more complicated era of CCaaS and omni-channel and cloud. And that's even before you layer on the two big letters AI. So I think what has happened is the technology in and around the contact center, omni-channel, self-service, that whole CX area has become more sophisticated. It's not just tech then being implemented that solves problems or works optimized. It requires operations to be at the table, defining business requirements, business needs, and it's really about customizing the CCaaS or the AI or whatever the solution is that we're working with for a customer to their actual business requirements. So oftentimes IT gets the budget to go do the spend, to find the upgrade, to find the right future state tech platform or tech stack. But because of the customization and sophistication of these tools today, if operations is not there, helping guide that discussion based on their need for process automation and workflow efficiency gains and just optimization to the business needs, then oftentimes people are left unhappy post-implementation. So I think we fill a very niche place in helping make those business translations over to the IT team to make sure that that project is successful. Because in some cases, the operations team doesn't even know what to tell IT to do or how to set it up or what they need because they haven't worked on the tech yet. That's the real conundrum right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, technology is moving so fast that it was an interesting statistic I was given by a very large premise-based phone. There are still a lot of enterprise companies that are using on-prem phone systems, which, I mean, with the emergence of the cloud, with the emergence of all the crazy, not crazy, but unique features and functionalities. And I mean, I've talked with different companies that literally have 12 to 15 different pieces that they're puzzling together somehow to make their business work. You talk a little bit about, you know, when you guys run into an organization that's like that, where do you start?
So, first of all, I think the number is almost 50% because I also recently saw this statistic about what's still on prem. So that was shocking to me. And I think probably because you and I play in cloud, right? That number feels like it's still like how can that be with all the transition we've already seen and done, right? So it's strategy. So part of the problem with all of this is these are not like just plug and play tools, right? They really have to line up with customer experience expectations because the consumer dictates at a CX level, right? Where your risk factor really is when it comes to how these tools work against maintaining and retaining customers and revenue, right? So that's number one. And number two, there's operational efficiency gains in most of the technology that we're working with today, right? These CCaaS systems, moving to digital self-service, even non-voice channels. These have ROI impacts on the business and the P&L. But they're not being realized, either the improved CX measurements or the improved P&L measurements, if it doesn't all start with a strategy and a plan. So as basic as that sounds, when you say, hey, Christa, where does it start? Like have a plan, actually have a plan around where you're trying to go in the next 3 to 5 years with your business and what the needs of that are, not just from a technology, security, automation perspective, but from a business workflow automation, process improvement, employee engagement perspective, and then map out that tech strategy from that business strategy. And then you're likely to get where you're trying to go faster without a whole bunch of redos, right? Or integration issues. What happens is different departments go off and they own different pieces of the tech stack. Ops isn't even at the table. And now you think you have omni-channel, but you really don't have it all on one platform. You've got it in 7 different platforms. 2 of them are on-prem. They don't all integrate. You don't have good data and analytics. All of that is avoided if you have the right strategy and plan up front.
Yeah. And I mean, especially, I mean, I'd love to get your opinion on these companies, big and small, that are still on on-prem systems. I think one of the things that we've seen is when you go reach out to a contact center software vendor, their salespeople and their engineers are so excited to nerd out and bring up that they're using AI and that they can do 30 different things. That what I've typically found is, hey, whoa. This customer's got an older technology, and that could even still be a cloud product, candidly, because the tech is moving fast. But they're trying to hit their quotas. They're trying to sell a lot of add-on services. They're not even at step 3 or 4 with the customer when they're trying to sell step 10 that the customer has no clue or business trying to order or buy. It's great in theory, but we typically try to take what are the main core reasons you're trying to make a change? Let's focus on that. And let's make sure we got a working solution. The add-on stuff can be a phase 2, a phase 3.
That's right.
What has your experience been kind of watching some of these projects yourself and your company?
I mean, so we philosophically align with you again because of the level of customization and or complexity that these systems now offer. Again, speaking about CCaaS, contact center as a service, or other like CRM or now AI tools. It really is not a plug in, go live, and you're done, right? There's an optimization period, obviously, for a lot of the AI tools. So there's got to be some implementation feedback loop in place once these tools are deployed. We should be looking at data and measurable results that were set up as part of the goal and the strategy up front so that we can keep kind of tweaking the systems, right? And you can't over inundate operations with too much change either, because as you bring in this new tech, it's changing the way frontline staff and frontline supervisors are doing their job, accessing the data they need to do their job. So it just makes sense to lower the risk of high employee turnover or poor CX to just phase that in. But it's important to have an idea of what those phases look like before you start the first phase, right? Because otherwise you're going to get to a point where you're going to want something that doesn't integrate back to everything else that you've kind of already put into place.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, along those same lines, like making a pretty significant technology shift. If you're going to Mach 10 and you don't have the first 3 steps to actually train your employees.
That's right.
So if you don't have that, I feel like that's a big miss a lot of times that companies, they don't want to pay for, like a physical on-board trainer, that sort of thing, where I'm sure you've seen it, but I'd love to hear more about your experience. We bought something, it was supposed to do these things. We barely know how to use it. Therefore, we have no clue how to really train our people. And we didn't pay said vendor to help train them. Now they're getting frustrated. And ultimately, as we know, employees are the biggest expense.
Yeah.
So if you're missing that, that is a huge hit to the P&L and the business as an entirety if you start losing employees.
Yeah, it's a very complicated situation because, at a boardroom and an investor level, there was a whole lot of hope. I think that AI would do significant cuts in the labor side of the CX contact center part of the enterprise. Obviously, there are a ton of case studies out there where that has happened. We have clients that have successfully seen significant changes in labor requirements with successful technology and AI implementation, but it takes a while to get there. And so, we also see what's happening around a lot of this technology is there's fear amongst the staff and employees as they fear they're going to be replaced. And ideally, as a business, you're not looking to lose subject matter experts and valuable assets, right, before you have everything in place to replace it. Just fundamentally, that doesn't make sense. So, if you talk, Nick, to a lot of our clients that have successfully deployed AI, something that's always really surprising, I think, to people is that often in those cases where different AI tools are being deployed or successful CCaaS, which includes, again, on the higher Gartner quadrant today, different AI capabilities, operations usually has more lift in setting those up successfully than IT does. And so you have to really we highly recommend at an appropriate level, frontline staff and operations are involved in the brainstorming, the design, the strategy, and the use case development of how this technology is going to be deployed. That creates an entire different environment now of focusing on optimizing what you're investing in instead of leaving it idle. We have a client that we just did some work for, and they were very proud of the fact that they purchased a top Gartner CCaaS solution. Then to add web chat, they went and got a whole nother product that didn't integrate with that. They're going to add another WFM QMS tool on top of all of that, which all could technically be in one platform today if they went in a different direction for probably half of what they would pay for all that. So that's the kind of thing we want to help customers avoid, because then it's either not all integrated, it's not all optimized, or they're paying way more money than they should be to have it all there. And those are just foolish mistakes that we're seeing way too often happening.
Yeah.
People are moving just a little too quick.
I was going to say, we just work with a fairly large credit union, and the folks there in IT leadership, they inherited a lot of things. And it was exactly that problem is they had, I won't name names of the vendors, but they had a particular UCaaS vendor that adds on a contact center vendor that you don't get the same feature set if you had gone to the contact center directly. Then there was add-on upon add-on upon add-on, which when we looked at the whole, we'll call it a mess, they're spending way too much money. We were able to bring in a solution that's like, look, all of this can all be in one platform now. That cleaned up the number of bills they're receiving. It also helps IT be more efficient because they don't have to manage 7 applications.
Absolutely.
And it makes their user experience, their employee experience, so much better because they're not having to toggle between 8 different things.
Absolutely. And it'll ROI, like, because that becomes an efficiency gain in all the client interactions, which creates a positive P&L experience. Consumers from a CX perspective want efficiency, consistency. They want you to have access to all the data. That all leads towards having one consolidated platform, or at least as few as possible, with really tight integration. And so if you're operating on systems where your agents are accessing multiple platforms, or your consumers for omni-channel support are working through multiple platforms, if you have to get your data and reporting through multiple platforms, odds are companies like yours and mine would love to help them streamline that whole stack, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's what I've liked about our conversations is from a tech perspective, you guys are agnostic, just like we are.
Yeah.
And within our new partnership, we're helping you guys get more information on the technology, help them procure. And that's what I think was being missed on some projects that we worked on, is all the operational help that I think people miss. And correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I've seen. Sometimes IT staff they're understaffed. They don't know that they should be even talking with operations or what have you. They pick a technology that they haven't gone through what I think you guys can do.
Yeah.
And then it's set up incorrectly. They're relying on the vendor to actually do that. And the vendor doesn't have an expertise in that business.
No.
They have an expertise in how their solution could work and, setting up some workflow, but not at the granular level like you guys do, which is why I think it's so tremendously important.
Yeah. And listen, I know we add a little cost to that, right? I mean, let's call the elephant out in the room for a minute. If you're an organization and, you're partnered with an extensive IT resource tool and company like yours, you have access to finding a lot of the right technology. If, again, you have the right representation of not just tech, but business requirements also in that search. Otherwise, even you can only find them the best based on what you know, right? So flushing those business operational requirements and gains and ROI gains out. I think the key is ROI, because we may add a little bit to the expense of defining the strategy and getting to the right technology, but we often, and I mean like 95% of the time, we pay for ourselves because we remove the redo and the reprogram and the reset up because it wasn't done right. We remove the lack of optimization periods because nobody knows how to communicate from ops to IT to the vendor, how to set it up. And oftentimes around workforce management, I know this is something you and I talked about briefly, but in most organizations of 200 or less agents without a really sophisticated call center ops leader, we often pay for our entire existence in like a strategy project just by helping identify workforce optimization opportunities that may or may not even include technology. So I think that for a little extra, you get a whole lot of insurance that you're moving in the right direction and you're doing it as cost efficiently as possible with low risk, again, to the customer experience. Because one of the things we're seeing is we're all spending billions of dollars on all this tech, and CX research is saying that consumers think we're going in the wrong direction. So go figure that out, right?
Tell me more about that. What data are they providing that they're getting that we're going the wrong direction? Is that like most people out there that are listening, they know the term Gen Z likes to not talk with humans, right? They want it all to be fixed on our phone. Millennials and older boomers, if you will, they all want to talk, they prefer to talk with somebody. Is that just as an aggregate, the whole market?
I think that's actually changed quite a bit. So I think there's a lot less generational tech usage gap than when it started. I think when CAS first data came out and we talked about Omni, there was a whole lot of generational data that said you had to really be segment savvy about how you did that. I think that gap has closed a lot more. Some of the measurements that we've seen data on, and I apologize, I can't cite, I don't like to bring up research without being able to cite it, but I don't have this in front of me. But a lot of issues around SLAs. I mean, you can find this online. Some of that's COVID related, right? We took a step backwards on basic SLA management, and a lot of organizations have not recovered from that. Now, that's some of the labor market challenges and things going on, but I also think we're trying to throw tech at that so that we can get efficiency gains from the technology and not have to deal with and replace some of that ever increasing on domestic labor costs, right? So so SLAs have been an issue. CSAT scores have been bouncing all over, and some areas and companies have really been struggling with that. Organizations are reporting negative ROI as well on some of this investment, which you and I both know really should never happen. I mean,
absolutely not.
with any of this technology in the CX space we're talking about, including issues around like with some of the AI tools, right? Like accuracy. So this is why I think when it comes to some of the AI tech, there's increased concerns now around compliance and security and quality. And so, it's one thing to provide self-service, but it's still got to be functional and actually assist the consumer, or they don't want that digital transformation either. So a couple of different areas it seems like we're missing the boat in as we're investing in all of this stuff.
Yeah, there was an interesting statistic about customer service that a company that was just a telco provider called Level 3 did years ago, that their happiest customers were not ones that they provided perfect service to. Their happiest customers were people that had problems, that they felt heard, that the problem got addressed and it was fixed in a timely fashion. Now, that is insane to think about, but that's the human way of doing it.
But doesn't that sound, when you say it like that, isn't that like sound so basic? Like what they want is somebody to hear them, own the problem, get it resolved, and communicate with them. Like it's not even like they have big expectations, right?
Right.
I mean, that's what always freaks me out about when we talk about CX. Like, it's not earth shattering. I don't want to wait on hold 20 minutes. We're all busy. We don't have time. So workforce optimization and management so that you can service me in an appropriate amount of time really doesn't feel like it should be that big of a lift, but it's something that organizations are still struggling with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll name a few. The airline industry. I mean, you still, a lot of times as you travel, it's an hour wait when you call sometimes for them to call you back. I unfortunately have to make a call to the IRS.
Oh boy.
Not really looking forward to that.
Good luck with that one.
How long I'm going to be on hold. So.
Yeah, good luck with that one. Yeah, it's really, there's rumors of upcoming efficiency, much like what we do, right? Is Trump now not announcing his efficiency cabinet? And I was like, let me into every federal government contact center operation and I will more than pay for myself, because I know if for-profit business is struggling to always optimize that, we know there's probably opportunity within the government.
I would venture to guess a lot of government entities still are on those on-premise phone systems.
Oh my goodness.
Or another.
And I would bet you we would just find nothing but opportunity, Nick.
Yes. A lot of red tape doing the government stuff. All right, well, I guess to close, our listeners would really like to hear about, when you take on a project, some of the measurable outcomes that you're really promoting to them, because that is not something that I feel like the CX companies and their engineers they just don't have data on it, right? Like they can say, well, if you use this, it's going to help your employees save more time. It's less applications. How do you get more granular, depending on obviously the type of call center, I'd imagine, with creating those outcomes, with letting management know about the outcomes, with creating reports for them, like all the things that go into, hey, by setting this up correctly, this is why you, from a business case, want to move forward said project, because it's going to save you money, create these efficiencies, and here's the measurable things. Because at the end of the day, if you're buying, again, as you mentioned, you can be throwing tech at a lot of things, but if you don't have any KPIs, to
Yeah.
say, well, yes, we saved money. Yes, we have better customer service scores. Whatever the
Yeah.
KPIs are. Tell us a little bit more about how you guys approach that.
So first, I'm going to say that we did an assessment about a year ago, and we found that only 70% of our clients actually have access to all the data we would deem required to run their operation efficiency. So their CX, sales, service support, back office, like function of supporting a customer. But if I poll businesses, 70% of them will say they have all the right data. So right there we have a big disconnect, right?
Right.
Between what organizations are looking at and what they should be. So philosophically, everything we do based on measurable KPI and ROI. We do not make any operational business transaction or transformation strategy recommendations or tech strategy without doing a business case on it. So business case for us is there's some sort of measurable improvement within the business from either a P&L perspective or a CX perspective. So that's going to give us a better CSAT, right? Or some other voice of the customer measurement, or it's going to give us improved P&L, which if you break that down in the contact center can be around agent productivity and utilization, around average handle time or average transactional requirements needed. We're looking for ways to decrease cost per transaction, increase employee retention, right? Increase access to data and other voice of the customer measurements, or we're saying don't do the project. Like what would be the point beyond that?
Right.
So really, whenever we begin something, or any customer begins something, they should start with what is the problem that you alluded to? What are you trying to solve? What's the use case specifics for how you feel like you could test that or set that up? And how are you going to measure it at the end? And I think, again, one of the benefits of working with us is anytime we do any strategy or roadmap work or assessment, gap assessment work, we're always laying that business case out because that's what the executive team needs to see, right? To justify the expense and to understand when it's going to ROI back.
Well, and also I think by having those metrics, as we started with, most of these projects are looked upon as they didn't do what we sought out to do, right? And that probably is because there's not very specific outcomes that are set at the beginning of we're going to try to get this much more efficient. We're going to try to save this much more money. We're going to this retention, whatever the is. And if that's not being explained at the beginning, I think if it was, a lot more of the percentage of those projects would actually be looked upon favorably.
Yeah. I fear that in 2024, most of the AI investment was like, okay, IT, go get AI, and we want to cut labor by 40%. Like that was the goal. Like without a use case, without ops at the table, without a data-driven strategy, IT was given a budget, given a mandate, not given a lot of time. And out we went and we plugged a bunch of AI in. Some of it worked, some of it ROI'd, some of it created better CX, and a whole lot of it did not. Right.
Yep.
And
I'll give you, and that's not just necessarily on the consumer side. I mean, that's, executives coming down, they're reading an article that AI can do this. Well, when this is true, I again won't name names. There was a particular AI vendor that first meeting I had with them as to learn about their solution and whatnot said that their goal was to alleviate all human interaction within a contact center 90% of the time. And their AI would get smarter about that. Well, that sounds tremendously awesome, right?
Yes.
Especially if I were to take that type of analytic and say, oh, we can do it. These guys are saying they can do it. And the executives go, well, that's the techie guy that knows what's going on. We're going to save a bunch of money. That sounds great. But are there some good use cases from stuff like that? Sure. Yeah. Is that the majority of the time? Absolutely not. Yeah. I think executives that are out there that may be watching, that's something to consider is that your technical guy is not an operations person. And when you're building out these customer journey scenarios, by throwing them ideas and expecting that they know how to do it, they don't. And that's not to say they're not smart. They don't have their own expertises. Operations is a different skill set than I think being technical.
And listen, it gets even more complicated than that, Nick, because not only should IT be responsible for understanding operational workflows and where automation can happen and where process improvements need to be defined to use the tech better, but even ops can't always do it. Because again, if you don't have anybody in your organization that has worked on speech analytics, has put agent assistant, has used gamification, has done WFM in a tech platform, how can, not only does IT not know what to do and how to set that up, nor should they, to your point, but operations doesn't even sometimes when they're at the table know what they don't know because they haven't used it, right? I sat in on a very, very large, very respectable national healthcare presentation at ICMI recently. And they literally were talking through their case study, and it's an incomplete case study. They have not successfully stood up a shared services like call center internally.
Right.
The case study was really all the challenges they've gone through, including going on to their second CCAS now, because the first one they picked wasn't the right one.
Right.
It's been an operational disaster. Leadership is losing faith in a model that absolutely should work and needs to be in place for their organization. And I raised my hand and said, at any point in time, did you ever think about, now these are the ops people, did you ever think about reaching out to an organization, a third party outside of your organization that could guide you on this to avoid all of that? Like having, again, rolling out an updated CCAS platform twice in a 2.5-year window. Avoidable, maybe not always, but mostly avoidable. People have to recognize what they don't know and not be afraid to raise their hand internally and say, listen, I'm IT. I can't represent what ops needs here. And even I'm ops and I don't even really know for sure how to leverage this new technology the right way. Right.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and that's where you have a business.
Hopefully
a very successful growing business.
A long time to help you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you being on. As we always do, we'll end with something golf related, which you mentioned you're not really much of a golfer. So my question is what do you dislike about golf the most?
Well, I don't dislike it. I don't, where I live, I don't get an opportunity to do it very often. So I find that golf is a game of practice and patience. If you don't get to play a lot, then that gets the hard. Practice is key. And patience, Nick, that's something I have sometimes, but not always.
Gotcha. My favorite thing I dislike about golf the most is when I have to wait when I'm playing it. There is nothing worse than going and playing a course.
Like if someone like me is in front of you on the course.
Not like you. You would know where to be, but that is a very it makes it just doesn't make it very fun to be out there.
There's that patient element again.
Yeah. So excellent.
Well, one day I hope we get to golf.
I'm sure that we will, because as I think we're discussing, you'll be at some of our events this year, which I'll share with the viewers. We have 17 in-person events, 4 charity golf tournaments, and 12 webinars across all sorts of different technologies going into 2025. Christa will be very likely on one of the webinars, and she'll certainly be at some of the events. So look forward to seeing you in person there. And please like, subscribe, comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. And again, Christa, awesome talking with you. I think you guys have such a tremendously important place. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, Nick. Have a great day.
You too.